I always feel like nobody can see me because I'm so short. So I'm just going to go on this. So thank you for having me. Always glad to be here at the forum. I feel like I was just here, and I usually tag team with David Mann, but David is out of business. So good for him, I'll say. He and Betsy are doing quite well. I just saw him the other day. So anyway, I'm glad to be here with my partners on both levies. As you know, the TLRC makes recommendations to the county commissioners, and then we put something in front of the voters to vote on, and so we'll be speaking to the importance of the levies. I think sometimes, the commissioners always talk about it's flat, no new taxes, but we sometimes forget to talk about the importance of the levies to begin with. And so you've got the right people here to talk about the importance of both of those levies. So I'm Denise Driehaus, currently a county commissioner. I'm running for re-election this year. As Bill said, it's a very busy year from top to bottom on the ballot. The ballot's going to be really long this year. I think am I right, 3 pages? Four pages? Yes, so there are a lot of us on the ballot this year. So my first thing to say is please make sure you're registered to vote. As you know, some people have been purged from the rolls. So it's very simple. Go to the Board of Elections. I've done it myself. Make sure you're still registered to vote. And then think about making a plan to vote, whether it's early voting or voting on election day. We really, really want to encourage people to get out and vote this year, as we do every year, but it's really important to make your voice heard. So that's my pitch for voting. So I am running to continue the work, to move the county forward. I've been in the office for like 7.5 years, almost 8 years now. And we've made a lot of progress in the county, and I don't want to reiterate all that I have said before in front of this forum, but I think it is important to note that when I was first elected in 16, I joined Todd Fortune and Chris Monzel in 17, and we were broke. I mean, the county was in really dire straits. We didn't have enough revenue to match the requests of the different departments to run the jail, to run the courthouse, to run economic development and planning and zoning and all the things that we do. And it was challenging. I mean, we didn't give people a raise for 5 years in a row. And I want to know who can retain and recruit people. We weren't paying them that much to begin with. And then we didn't give them raises for 5 years in a row. And there weren't robust benefits. And so I took that very seriously. Fortune did as well, and so did Monzel, to his credit. And so we put into place some things. We did first of all, we said everybody should make $15 an hour at the county. Some people weren't making $15 an hour. And then we did a competitive wage study to see where we were in the market and make sure we were paying people dignified wages. And so we did that. We rolled over the union terminal tax over into the general fund. No new taxes, but we did repurpose a tax to create some more revenue so that we could run the operations. And then we started to get busy about what other things can we do to retain and recruit people, because we were losing people like crazy to our neighboring
Denise,
counties.
you can just move over if you want to.
Can I move?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be fine.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I feel much freer.
Okay, yeah, because you're still visible.
You
Okay.
can see me, actually.
Yeah,
See me.
yes. Okay.
So anyway, we have competitive wages now. We've been very careful about that. And then we also implemented a parental leave policy, 8 weeks of paid leave for someone that has a child, adopts a child, both parents. And we have a tuition reimbursement program too. Again, trying to retain and recruit people, young people, diverse people, making sure that everyone knows you're welcome at the county. We weren't doing a great job of that before. The other thing Fortune and I did originally was create the Office of Economic Inclusion and Equity to make sure that everybody in the county felt welcome at the county. We didn't have much diversity by way of gender or race at the county, but when it came to boards or employees or some of the contractors we were using, we really needed to switch that up. And so we now have a disparity study that has been conducted at the county. It took a couple years to get that done, but we did it. And so now we have actual goals in front of us, and we know what the market is, and we know what a reasonable goal should look like, and we're hitting those goals. And so I think it was a bit of a culture shift, I think, at the county by way of presenting differently. Outward facing, and then taking care of our employees and offering dignified space for them to work in. And so a couple of things that I have personally then been working on in addition to that are related to the Commission on Women and Girls. Yay. I founded that in 2017 when I was elected. By the way, Fortune and Monzel obviously are no longer on the commission. Now it's Commissioner Reese and Commissioner Summer Dumas, and so different partners, and we are moving forward in a very much the same kind of direction that was started when I first got there. The Commission on Women and Girls has had a couple things that I think are notable lately. We continue to do the pay equity pledge and have 120 businesses that are employers that have signed on. It's for-profit, not-for-profit, and government. So the county was the first on. And we're just trying to make sure that people are getting paid for the work that they do, no matter what their gender is. And so we've had quite a bit of success with that. We have worked in the area of domestic violence and the DIVERT program, which is where there is a call for a first responder. First responder goes to the scene, and it's a domestic violence situation, and we want to make sure the woman and the kids are safe. And so DIVERT allows for a call 24/7 to go to Women Helping Women to bring them on site to secure the scene and make sure that the women and kids are safe. And law enforcement, by the way, then can do what they're focused on. That used to be a citywide program. It is now a countywide program, thanks to the Commission on Women and Girls. And then lastly, we were very influential in getting a law passed last year in the state of Ohio that requires all schools, public and private, to have period products for free in schools. The state paid for it, it's $5 million, and that bought the dispensers and the first year of products for the school districts, and now the school districts are expected to pay for that through their toilet paper and paper towel budget. We are doing it at the county. All our buildings have free period products, and so we've done it ourselves. The cost is relatively low, and so we didn't feel like it would be too much of a burden, but we did kickstart it with money from the state. So on the other committee I lead is the Addiction Response Coalition. We just issued an alert today. So we have reduced the amount of overdose deaths in Hamilton County. That's the good news. The bad news is we're still losing hundreds of people in this county every single year to overdose deaths. It's one of the few measures that we have to figure out whether or not our strategies are succeeding. And remember this group, and I keep pointing to Josh because he's on it, it's prevention, treatment, law enforcement, public health, hospitals, faith community, business community, sitting together saying how do we solve for the addiction crisis in our community. As the drugs change, the populations that are using change, the numbers change, what are our strategies and how are we working together to try to save lives and get people into long-term recovery. So we are doing that, and the numbers reflect it. And the numbers, the first couple of years ago, the numbers went down 16%, huge decrease. The next year they went down again. This year we're likely to go down again. But we just issued an alert this morning because we just lost, I'm trying to remember how many people, it was 10 people over the last few days to overdose deaths. And so we as a coalition are saying, what is happening? What are we seeing on the ground? Because the quick response team and law enforcement are responding to these scenes. Who are these people? What were they using? What is happening? And so what we know is the fentanyl has made its way into every kind of drug in this community, and people are either unwittingly taking it or sometimes taking it. There was one situation where someone had tried to commit suicide a number of times and took the fentanyl instead. So it's very sobering. The work is very sobering. I am very grateful for the people that not only are doing this work now, but have been doing this work for decades, like Talbot House and the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board, because they were doing this work before anybody even knew what we were talking about. But it's good work, but it's challenging work, and we still have an issue in this community. And so, you know, the reason I run for the County Commission is just to continue the work. We've built, we're in a decent place, but there's so much more to do. And there's so much more opportunity, I think. And so that's kind of, I hope, informative. We're also doing a lot of economic development stuff. We've got a number of our departments are moving up to that Bond Hill site. I don't know if you've heard about this in the news. It's a very efficient way for us to do business. We're going to save money doing this because we're divesting of some of the properties that we own that are very old and have a great deal of capital need. So we're going into a newer building that's energy efficient and a really pretty nice place to work. Now, we're not going, by the way. County commissioners are staying right where we are, but public health is going, JFS is going, and this will allow people also to access us better because there's free parking. And one thing I hear all the time when people come down to our meetings or go to visit JFS, there's nowhere to park. And so we've got 1,000 spots up there, and they're all free. And so that should really help. And it's on a bus line too, so it's very accessible. And it's more centered, frankly, in the county. I mean, you know, I like to think about, oh, well, the city's, you know, the center of the county. The city's not the center of the county. I mean, up in that Norwood area, that's kind of the center of the county, and this is in Bond Hill. So we're getting a little further to the north to help people access all the services that we have. Veteran services is going in, so you can hear that there are a number of agencies going in there. And then we will have to be very thoughtful and careful about how we repurpose the buildings. The Alms and Deputy building is the big one, which is down here over on, right next to the courthouse, right across the street. And my expectation, because the County Commission has been very clear on our emphasis on housing, affordable housing, that be converted into residential so that we can meet that need and, you know, respect the history of that building, but also create some energy in that area. The JFS workers, by the way, primarily don't work in that building. I mean, they're out in the field, right? And so after COVID, a lot of them didn't come back downtown and stayed out in the field. So there are only about 100 employees in that building anyway. We can have more residential in that than 100, and it's 24/7. So I'm excited about that opportunity. We have to be really thoughtful about how we move forward on that, but I think it's a great opportunity. And then we've got quite a bit going on down at the banks with our sports teams. And I'm happy to talk about any of that if you'd like, but we're in the thick of it on all things. So I would love to field questions and talk about what you're most interested in.
Why don't you go more into the stadium issue?
Okay.
I mean, the numbers are just mind-boggling.
Yes. So we had a report, a presentation last week from the architect. The Bengals and the county said, we need to hire an architect to help us vision as to what this stadium, it's a huge county asset, you all own it, and we're not utilizing it like we should. And so there are two things. There's the facilities and maintenance plan, which is kind of nuts and bolts. It's a very old building. We need to do tuck pointing and waterproofing and improve the escalators and the freight elevators and that kind of stuff. Okay, we all know we need to do that. And that work, by the way, is hundreds of millions of dollars. But on top of that is what we had presented last week, where the architect came and said, all right, you've asked for a different way to look at this facility. Here it is. This is our best vision of this. And what it does, there are a couple key components. One is, I don't know if you realize, the Bengals operate, their offices are in the stadium. And so the plan takes those offices out of the stadium, puts them in a different building next to the practice facility, both inside and out, recreates those, and allows us to repurpose some of the space in the stadium for different kinds of events. But also, we don't have the extra layer of having to go to the Bengals every time there's a different kind of event, a concert or something like that. You go to the Bengals and say, hey, we've got something going on, and we always are having to negotiate that. This is not favorable to the taxpayers, as you all know. And so it can be very challenging to do that over and over again. So to get them out of the facility would be helpful. It's very expensive, though. That's one of the largest ticket items there. There are other pieces that, and frankly, that commissioners asked for more accessibility, open up the plaza, open up spaces where people can't afford a season ticket. They can at least go to one game, maybe it's standing room only, bring some local vendors in to provide some of the food and beverage in the facility, and think about accessibility too, like people with disabilities and how we are responding to those needs. The building is old, and it is responded to the old ADA compliance. We have different compliance standards now, and we need to reflect that in that stadium. So those are the kinds of things that you saw. The price tag was $102 billion with a B. So we don't have $102 billion. And so the county has said, we are willing to look at some of what has been offered, but the financial stack last time was about 95% taxpayers and about 5% the team. We are not interested in that financial stack. So we're looking for a financial stack that includes the team and the NFL and the state of Ohio and the taxpayers. We are not raising taxes for this purpose. We have the sales tax. It doesn't sunset. It's ongoing. It's meant to provide maintenance and upgrades to the stadiums, both stadiums. Keep in mind, we've got two stadiums, paying off debt service also with that, and the PTR is part of that. And so we've got to balance all this stuff. So what I expect is we've got a meeting, or when I say we, I mean they, our consultants and our attorneys, have meetings with the Bengals consultants and attorneys I think it's next week, am I right? Next week, and to talk about what has just been presented to both them and us, and think about what we can afford and what's possible, knowing that 1.2 billion, if it's just, I mean, if it's just them, there's no way it's going to be 1.2 billion. We're going to have to look at how much money we have, and then lower that price tag until we get to a point where it's something that we can afford, and still recognizes that we need to do some renovations to that stadium to keep it in the market and to allow it to behave differently, to bring different kinds of events in it. So that's the big picture, and then the lease is over on the side, and we're negotiating the lease at the same time, and so that will talk about the term, like how long the Bengals will commit to be here, and that is also going to inform how much we invest. Right? I mean, why would you invest hundreds of millions of dollars in a facility if the team says we're not staying here for the long term? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking about. It's complicated because there are really two pieces of it, right? And they fit together, but they're not the same.
Is this a proper form to ask a question about the property taxes?
Sure.
I live in Westwood. And as you know, that's one of the areas that was harder hit with the real estate raise. And most people in Westwood are not of the wealthiest. There's been some things on the news saying there may be some relief, but can you talk to that? Because that was such a shock to see an incredible, some areas actually had their taxes reduced, not in Westwood. I don't know how it was picked for certain areas to really jack it up and others maybe maintaining or reducing, but I'm a person from Westwood who is suffering under this significant jump.
Yeah, so we don't have anything to do with that. However, I don't want to let me try not to punt and say that I have been in conversations with Jessica Miranda and Jill Schiller, the auditor and the treasurer, trying to sort through why some areas got hit so much harder than others. A lot of that is market driven. What's been going on in those neighborhoods, the property values have gone up in Westwood as they have in other communities, stayed flat in other places, and that has a lot to do with the value then and the taxes on the value of the property. So that's part of it. The other piece though, let's just be honest about where, if there were to be change to correct the problem, where the change would have to happen, and that's up in the state of Ohio. The funding formula for schools is out of whack, where the property tax owners are paying way more than they should, and the state is paying way less than they should. That has been unconstitutional for decades in the state of Ohio.
Exactly.
If the legislature would do their part, and I was there for 8 years, and we howled about it, and nothing happened. If they would do their part and really fund public schools in the way they should, and I said public schools in the way they should, then we wouldn't have to rely so much on local property taxes to pay for those school systems. Because if you look at the pie chart on where those taxes are going, the chunk that goes to the schools is this big, and the chunk to the municipalities is this big, and then the county, the levies, little tiny slivers up here. And so while we are sensitive to the levies going flat this year in response, in part, to what's happening with property taxes, they are not the ones eating up the increase in the levies. It's the schools and the municipalities. And we play a small part, and the levies are running flat this year. I mean, we're doing our part, but it really will take changes in the legislature to make real progress happen. In the meantime, we've got the Board of Revisions process, where you can go and argue that your property value is too high. And so that process is rolling through. We have provided some support for people that are doing that to get appraisals. We're working with legal aid because if you go into the BOR and you don't have a recent appraisal on your house, you lose. You don't have any evidence that it should be anything different than what they said. And so we're trying to provide some relief in that way, and we've done quite a bit of eviction relief as well through ARPA. That money is run out. So we're trying to play our part, but in the big picture, really, it sits with the state And Dunny Isaacson has got some legislation to think about that. There's also something in his legislation that talks about the homestead exemption and expanding that, or recognizing that as they're making people aware that could benefit from that. So there are some things we can do, but in the end, the overhaul needs to happen at that level. And Jill, and I'm sorry, I good friends of mine, Jill Schiller and Jessica Miranda, just put out a statement. Kevin, do you have it by any chance? It was a press release.
Yeah,
I think it went out yesterday
Yeah.
that explained some of this. Thankfully, I read through it yesterday, so I have a basic knowledge of it. But it's very informative, and it gives you some really good information. So Kevin, will you look that up before I leave?
Yeah.
And we'll make sure you have it.
And you were saying that I could reach out to legal aid to help do an appraisal, or what number do I call?
So the Board of Revision process, that is closed, to be clear, that is closed for this year. There will be another opportunity next year to do the same thing, because they run it every year. So we provided legal aid services for appraisals for individuals that had filed the complaint in line with the deadline, so that they get a fighting chance when they went in front of the BOR. That's what we were trying to accomplish.
I've tried for years with the homestead thing,
Uh-huh.
and they said if I had requested a few years back, I would be eligible. But I have a decent pension, so I'm not eligible.
Okay.
So,
I would recommend that you check again, but I.
okay, I haven't this
comment.
past year, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Who's your state, in the Westwood, who's your state rep?
I'm sorry.
Is it Dunny? Oh, is it Cindy
But
Abrams?
there's no income eligibility for the homestead.
Yes, it is, $32,000.
It used to be there wasn't.
Yeah. Talk to the state legislature.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So to expand
Yeah.
that criteria to allow more people to participate, that's at the state level, and they could do that if they wanted to. They could provide some relief if they wanted to.
Some Bill sites here, but
Where is the revenue landed? In other words, as a result of the increase in the valuations, how is that translated into dollars and cents for the county, the city, the schools?